Welcome to Coleman Report Live. I'm Bob Coleman, and we're talking Main Street and the small business lenders who help it grow. Lance and Katie, good to see you both. Glad we're safe and sound, and ton of information. So let's get to it. Number one, this came up yesterday. If you had a loan put on hold by SBA and they said go to Lexisnexis, but the link is down. Well, Lance, let's do, first of all, what is Lexisnexis, Lance? And
Bob, it's, the best way to describe it is it's a pretty comprehensive credit / background / borrowing activity / criminal activity. It is an incredibly comprehensive lending background report on a borrower. If somebody committed a crime in 1962, Bob, it shows up on a Lexisnexis report.
And with the cost, how much does this cost the lender? Do you know offhand?
Bob, I wish I could tell you. I've been on the ordering end of many Lexisnexis, but I'm not sure what the cost is.
I don't know. That's why I'm asking the question.
But, you know, we all run credit reports. The Lexisnexis is much more comprehensive, Bob. It'll tell you every location someone's lived, every mortgage they've ever had, any speeding tickets.
Lance, today pictures of you when you had hair or real hair.
No, but I'd be surprised if they don't. I've had some interesting conversations with my borrowers. I had one borrower who had a speeding ticket that was more than a misdemeanor speeding ticket. And and it was easy to get cleared, not a big deal, but he was laughing at me. He said, I was going 120 miles an hour when I got there.
Yeah, Joseph never had any of those. Go back to the results, Joseph. I was just curious. So what do we do when this happens and we can't get a hold of Lexisnexis? What do we do, Lance?
I'm not sure. Most institutions, I think, have accounts with Lexisnexis, but I just communicate.
It's just they're being overwhelmed and it was a one-off. Is that how we?
I think that probably is the case, Bob.
Okay. Yeah, I think the lender who sent that to me said they're sicking borrowers on SBA, but that's not going to be any good.
You know, my thought is, Bob, if SBA's asking you to pull Lexisnexis, SBA's got some sort of hint of a criminal conviction possibly that needs to be looked at. It could be a variety of things, but again, the Lexisnexis is a very comprehensive background report on a borrower.
We've been doing a lot of coverage on the hold codes. In general, is this getting worse or is it getting better on SBA processing or clearing the codes or B, not issuing as many? There you go, Lance. 2/3 say we're going the wrong way.
Yeah, I think in SBA's effort to avoid those 10 o'clock news stories about PPP borrowers who shouldn't have gotten the loans, the hold code situation, I mean, it does make sense. SBA's doing a deeper dive into the applicants, making sure information is correct, trying to avoid those circumstances, Bob, where borrowers would steal someone's taxpayer ID number, trying to avoid those situations where non-existent businesses got PPP loans. But in an effort to do that, it's slowed down the process for all PPP borrowers.
Katie, what are you hearing on the street and your research?
It seems like, unfortunately, talking to Chris on Tuesday about this and just what I've been hearing in total, seems like a lot of people are still having a lot of problems with these. SBA did warn people that it could take more than 48 hours to clear them, and I think that's probably part of the slowness of it, is everybody wants these cleared as soon as possible. And that's a problem because you're sitting there waiting for these to be cleared. Other than that, I don't really know of any advice except for, obviously go to Lance's webinar later this week and find out more about fixing those. But it's really just a continued problem. And obviously SBA is aware of the issue and they're working on it. But that's unfortunately the situation we're in right now.
Well, and it's difficult, Bob, because in the second draw PPP loans, those people got a first draw loan where the information was put in E-Tran and there was an immediate loan number and documents
their money
created and they got their money quickly. And this time just getting to a yes is taking several days.
And this question came from one of our listeners, said, is your lending institution receiving straight declines? Can they be cleared if they were placed in a hold status? Lance, what is your understanding?
Typically a straight decline is going to be because of an ineligible borrower or someone who's gotten a PPP loan at another institution. This is a question that, and I actually saw this question in the script, Bob, and tried to reach out to a friend of mine at SBA to get a better answer for you, and was not able to get an answer, but I will hope that I can communicate with them sometime today, Bob, and maybe I can give a better response tomorrow.
Joseph, let's ask the question tomorrow on what percentage of the loans are being declined. What's your feeling, Lance? Just out of curiosity, what do you think the numbers are?
I don't know that there are that many declines, but quite a significant number being placed on hold because of hold codes. I haven't heard a tremendous discussion about loans being straight out declined, and typically, Bob, a straight decline is because they've applied at more than one institution and some institution beat you to the punch, or it could be because they're coming in maybe they defaulted on federal debt and the SBA has that record.
I picked that up. Joseph, let's ask the two questions tomorrow. Number one, what percentage are the holds? And Katie, last time we ran that, they were low 20% range?
Yeah. Well, overall, we had a lot of people who had holds, but I think only about 20% of their loans were being held over. So I think, I don't know, most lenders are affected by it, but not all of their loans are affected by it.
Okay, very good. We'll ask both those questions tomorrow. Hey, this is interesting. Katie, tell us about this. This came from the Federal Reserve Bank. Which bank? Do we know?
It is a combination. They work together on it. Yeah. So I did a little bit of research into this. This comes from their yearly credit report. So this is looking at PPP loans from 2020. It came out at the end of the year. In looking at it, there's some great news here for especially small banks and CDFIs. They did absolutely wonderful as far as the borrowers are concerned. They're very satisfied with those. Unfortunately, you've got larger banks and fintechs kind of on the lower end. Overall, though, this is kind of impressive just looking at this compared to regular loans as well, which I believe I have a thing on that as well that we can talk about later. Oh, there it is. Yeah, so looking at it here, this is overall all lending, not just PPP. Over last year, small banks actually exceeded those finance companies in satisfaction. But it's overall just great to see small banks and finance companies being able to reach out to borrowers and make those borrowers feel more satisfied with their loans and ultimately feel more comfortable with their lending situation.
Yeah, I'm sort of surprised by the negative remarks or negative numbers for the online lenders, Lance. You would think those would be higher, but it's the opposite.
I'm not, Bob, especially in this round. The problem is some of your larger institutions and your online lenders, it's all through a portal. And the small business puts their application in and there's a problem or an error. And there's not a human being typically to reach out to. There's probably an email box, and the small business borrower submits an email and says, how do I fix this? And maybe they get an email back or get told to email a different email address, where smaller institutions, CDFIs, credit unions, and banks, there's probably a human being on the other side that a small borrower can reach out and talk to. Yeah. So, I think satisfaction comes from good customer service and good customer service centers around helping borrowers get those problems correct.
Well, I mean, But overall, I mean, the numbers for totally dissatisfied, large banks 8%, small banks 6%. I mean, I'm not worried about those numbers. Online lenders are double that, and finance companies are in the middle. So, but I think having a 6% dissatisfied rate, obviously, they've been declined and they're not happy.
Well, and the challenge
Yeah.
with your online and your larger banks, Bob, is they have such a huge volume of applications that they have to use a more online portal
Right.
approach to PPP lending.
But overall, I mean, if you're talking flip it and call these approval ratings, banks at 79%, large banks at 66%, those are good ratings. You can't argue with them at all. Hey, real quick, what happened? We got a ton of questions. I'm going to get to them. Katie, did the Senate vote on Ms. Guzman yesterday?
No, yesterday was just a preliminary hearing from the Senate committee.
Okay.
Just wanted to quickly go over what she ended up talking about. Of course, at these hearings, they typically ask them a bunch of questions based on their priorities. And sometimes it's kind of rapid fire kind of questions, and they don't really get much of an opportunity to give their own opinion. She did have her own statement where she talked about her past and her experience with small business. But after that, they went into things like whether convicted non-financial felons could get PPP in the future. She did say she was interested in exploring that. She also said that she really wants to continue focusing more on underserved communities and making sure they get PPP, which is another issue that several senators brought up. They did bring up the president's proposed $15 minimum wage and an issue with Planned Parenthood getting PPP loans. She didn't want to offer an opinion on that yet. She was still exploring the issues. That's fairly common for this kind of hearing to hear those kinds of things, though. That's not,
She was dancing.
they don't typically get too political.
Oh, yeah. That's it.
Bob,
Very good. Go ahead,
I
Lance.
compare that to the days when I was only answering questions on 7A and 504 loans versus today answering a lot of PPP questions. There are a number of questions that I have to back up and say, hey, look, I'm going to have to ask somebody. I'm going to have to research it. So I can imagine her getting peppered.
The great line. That's above my pay grade. I'm not, go talk to someone else. Hey, congratulations to our friends over at Thomas. Those are amazing numbers. They've done a great job in the healthcare business, also for rural America. That's one of my passions. They've done a lot of these for BNI, and rural America has huge issues with healthcare and infrastructure. So that's good news. Let's go to the questions. Paul. It's a long question, but basically we want to know is, this is what we asked yesterday. Lance, you want to give a shot at that or punt?
Somebody, let's see, they're self-employed 19. They would just pay
to an S corp. Yeah.
It's a reasonably complicated. If they had 1120S and they paid themselves payroll, it makes it fairly easy. When they elected to change their business organization and filing a Schedule C, they still could document payroll with a payroll report or 941 report, IRS Form 941 reports. So they still should be able to document payroll. If they don't have payroll,
there was no payroll. There was no payroll. It was just.
If there's no payroll, they're going to use the Schedule C net profit. Yep.
Okay. Todd has a question. We have a PPP loan to an old company who was in existence February, March last year. In July, he moved some of his employees to a new company to separate two units. Is there any rule or provision allows him to attribute payroll paid by the old company for purposes of calculation? That sounds pretty complicated. Pretty circuitous.
It centers around, does the new company have a separate taxpayer ID number? If they all operate if they both operate under the same taxpayer ID number, there is a potential to use payroll from both. But my guess is if they opened a new company, it's going to have a separate taxpayer ID number, and in the PPP world, it'd be looked upon as a new borrower.
Right.
And the new company was not in existence on February 15th, so they would not be an eligible PPP borrower.
Yeah, my comment, Todd, and a lot of these questions also for Paul is let's be careful. Let's don't put a round peg into a square hole if it's not there.
Well, and you don't want to force a PPP application because this is 1% paper for the bank. And if you don't have the 100% guarantee and option for forgiveness, that's a problem.
Yeah, and if you lose that guarantee, that is a problem. Jody says we have a hold code of 17. I have no clue what it is. Katie, were you able to do a little research on that? Do you have codes?
Yeah, so this is an interesting issue that she's having because hold code 17 is not a public hold code, as she was just saying. If you go on that hold code list, it's not there. So I don't really know. Lance, where would you have them go for this? I don't know.
Again, that would be a question that I would send to one of the servicing centers. You could send it to Little Rock, Fresno, Herndon, Citrus Heights. Send it to one of the servicing centers and see, or your district office, and see if you can get a response. I agree with Katie. It's not I don't know what a 17 is.
Fair enough. Katie, Jody follows up on EIE numbers. The original number was incorrect. They've tried to change it, but they don't have access to it. How do we fix it, Lance?
Well, you're going to have to get proof of that EIN number, which is the IRS form that shows the EIN number, and it's going to have to be submitted to SBA through their portal.
Jackie wants to know any suggestions on getting DUNS number issues fixed. Seems impossible.
I really don't.
It isn't, according to Lance. Lunel says, how many people are making sure that the first draw gets spent prior to the second draw?
I hope everybody, because that's one of the rules is the first draw funds must be spent prior to disbursement on the second draw. Probably the best evidence of that is a forgiveness application.
Ah, very good. Vicky, we are getting multiple errors, discrepancies with date of business formation. Nowhere to upload proof other than to send an email and wait. Is that correct?
I was of the understanding that you could get, for instance, a printout from the Secretary of the Certificate of Good Standing would be one way to prove this and upload it into the portal. But I'm not actually working on the input this go around, so I'm not 100% sure. But probably the best proof on this era is a certificate of good standing.
Jim asked, any word on CDC servicing fees from 11-12 payments? He's saying payments are not being made for over $9,000. I don't have an answer for that. I don't know if you do, Lance.
The CDC servicing, I haven't heard any clarity on that. I sure have not.
Okay. And finally, the last question from Matt. We have been told by servicing centers not to send verification documents anymore and use the portal. However, the portal only allows users to upload documents. What do we do, Lance?
Well, the servicing centers are a good source for questions to be answered, but in terms of uploading documents, those will have to be done through the portal.
I got a bunch of questions. Well, we have to hold this over tomorrow, Lance. Real quick, give an elevator pitch on what you're doing on Tuesday, and then I know you have to run.
We're doing a webinar for your borrowers that operate in the hospitality industry to help them understand the PPP loan process, both first and second draw and we'll talk some too. Bob, I've wove some information in about the 11-12 payment information on NAICS code 72. So those borrowers are also aware of that. But we're going to try to help the hospitality industry understand the PPP process. So sign up your borrowers.
Yeah, and I know we have a bunch of SBDCs joining us, which they'll be able to help their people. So I mean that's a good thing. And of course Lance's hold codes. Lance, I know you need to run. Thank you very much, Katie. Thank you for your input, and thank you for joining us today for Coleman Report Live and for supporting America's Main Street, one entrepreneur at a time.
Have a great day.